Welcome to the Inspired Podcast, where we help women get on the path to God, one step, one story, one season at a time. This is a special season we're calling Transitions, a reflective series marking the past, present, and future of Inspired. You'll hear honest conversations with the women who helped build this ministry and those stepping into what's next. Whether you've been with us from the start or are just now finding your place, we're so glad you're here.
Welcome back to Season 7, Episode 2. I'm joined by two of my favorite people, and we have Pastor Zach on this side, Zach Brown, and we have Rebecca Brown.
Hello.
If you don't know, they're married.
I never thought I'd be sitting across from my husband during a podcast.
There you go.
Here we are.
There's always a first.
Admittedly, she is one of my favorite people in the world.
Thanks, guys. Jeez.
Yeah.
Wait, what'd you say?
How long have you been married?
Oh, almost 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy.
When's the anniversary? It was a fall wedding.
Yeah,
wasn't
October 10th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
Yep.
coming up.
It's either
It's
October.
like y'all's favorite season, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
The fall season.
It's definitely
It
our
is the
vibe.
best.
It's either like 75 and like blistering hot, which I feel like it's going to be this time of year, or it's going to be 40 and rainy and freezing, which is what it was for our wedding.
Yep.
But it was like the perfect moody fall like vibe that just made you want to curl up and like do some hot cocoa and read a book.
Cozy up
And
in a blanket.
yeah, that's like our vibe. So
I will say the first time I met you guys, it was not in the fall. It was on a blistery, rainy, Easter-ish type season.
Yeah.
But our friendship quickly grew, and I remember going over to your house the first time, and like y'all had like one of those blanket racks and like coffee mugs. Like you'd change out the coffee mugs on your little coffee mug holder, and they would be like all fall. I'm like, they love the seasons, and I'm not gonna rat you out, but I mean, when do you decorate for fall? How long?
Pretty much August
this is
1st.
September that we're talking about, and you've been decorated for fall for a good month now.
6 weeks probably.
Yeah.
Like,
beginning of August.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it has been.
I'll take some of the heat for that. It's my fault because I love it, because fall represents one of my favorite times of the year, which is football season, but also just all the vibes and the smells and all the things. But here's my theory on this. Okay, so you decorate for fall August 1st, then you go for like a good couple months. Okay, but then in October, you change the vibe a little bit and you go to like a more like Halloween, like kind of like that vibe. And then November 1st, you go Christmas. You do that for a couple. You do that for a couple
We're
months.
gonna have to agree to disagree.
You do that for a couple months, and then
We've always disagreed.
Then
on that. That's
January
okay.
1st, you tear it all down, and it's a whole new year. So
there's a lot of decoration clutter.
yeah, but you can like layer it in. You don't have to do it all at one time. You
He's a professional interior decorator.
You like layer in the vibes and different things like that. So
Okay. Well, even though I love talking with you about fall things, there's a more significant conversation to be had here at this table today, and I'm really excited to kind of move us in that direction. You might be wondering, why is a guy on the podcast? I actually think this is the first Inspired podcast that we've had a male, so welcome.
And rightly so. He is the inspired girl I don't know, man representative. Like, what do we call you?
Man girl representative.
Man girl, yeah.
They call the women on staff. I don't know if I should share this or not, but I'm going to share it anyways. The women on staff call me Chief Inspired Girl. Is what they call me. So
okay, but you live with a lot of women.
yeah.
You finally have the one son that is the testosterone in your family.
Yeah.
But it just kind of comes naturally to you. And you grew up with sisters. And so, I mean, we're kind of opposite, because I grew up with a bunch of boys and I still live with a bunch of boys. And so I always kind of think this is very ironic, as we have like done inspired things together over the years, that you live with a bunch of girls and I live with a bunch of guys. And here I am doing a female type role, and you're, helping along. So all that to say, Zach has been very instrumental with Inspired, and so has Rebecca, his wife. And so today, last episode we talked about like kind of where the podcast has been, where it's gone, and where it's going. And we kind of took a moment. Janice said this really, special thing about all throughout Scripture, God encourages us to look back. I mean, like, God is a God of the future, but He's also a God that asks us to remember Him and to give Him glory where glory is due, I mean, I guess that the word there is usually honor, but I think that as I look back on Inspired, we've talked a little bit about in episode 1 where the podcast has been, where the conferences have been, and I think that there's a special episode that I think that you would enjoy listening to is where did Inspired start and who did it start with and what has it done and what are the behind the scenes? So think of this as kind of a behind the scenes episode because there's a lot of Inspired that you probably see, but there's a lot of Inspired that you don't know that has gone on in the background and how things happen and how it started. And so we're going to be diving into that conversation today. And like I said, these two people are very instrumental in that process. And so we're just going to start at the very beginning. And like Zach was saying, this takes us all the way back to 2020.
Yeah.
And so for a moment, can you kind of set the scene for 2020 in the church world in a ministerial sense of, where people were at? Yeah.
It was definitely the theme of this season's transition. So 2020 was a time of transition for a lot of churches and just people in general as they're trying to figure out, okay, what is this new world? What is my place in a COVID world and what does that look like? And for us, particular as a church and as an organization, we were in the middle of finishing a building project, and we had 2 locations before COVID, but then post-COVID, like a lot of churches, we kind of came together and went into one location, and we moved into a new facility. And through some of that, there was some conversation about, okay, how do we continue to reach people? How do we continue to help people grow? We were having a lot of, I think, staff conversations around the time of, hey, we always want to help new people discover who Jesus is, but we don't want to just stop there. We want to continue to help people grow in their relationship with Jesus. And so we were just kind of going back to the drawing board, which I think a lot of people did during COVID, and just started assessing and saying, what more can we do? How can we intentionally help people find community, get connected to mentors, grow in really experience more in their relationship with Jesus. It's not just a one-time decision that you make, but a journey that you walk on. And along the way, some things shifted around in terms of roles at the church and responsibilities. And I found myself at a place where I was kind of being asked to lead discipleship efforts in our church kind of through that season. And that included men's and women's ministry, to which we had really not had. I would say this: we had not had anything super organized from a staff perspective from a women's ministry. We have a rich history of people in our church who have said, "Hey, we want to do some events, we want to create some things," and they did a great job kind of organizing and making some things happen before. But we kind of took the opportunity with 2020 to reset the scene and say, "Let's step into something new." And I remember it was around that time that you had a vision for what a potential women's ministry could look like, which is funny because I feel like you would say you never saw yourself leading a women's ministry or doing women's ministry.
True. Like I said, I grew up with a bunch of boys.
At all, and doing anything like that. And so I just remember, like, as I was stepping into, trying to lead in this space, I know you had something, and we just kind of got together and said, well, do you want to do this?
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, let's do this. But I think you also started involving, like, the two of you started, like, having a lot of conversations around this time. Because you guys had, like, we had known each other as a family for about 18 months at this point, because you guys came in 2018. Right. To the church.
Right.
We were already here at the time. So we had known each other for about 18 months. And the two of you started really talking about, like, what a women's ministry could look like.
Yeah,
here.
where did those conversations start?
I was about to say, I mean, I really feel like they started at breakfast.
Yep,
at
Breakfast
Wigwam.
Club.
We would, I don't know for how long, it was a season for probably a year at least, where we would just get together for breakfast once a week or once every other week when we were able to. And
yeah, that was also the period of young kids. So
yeah, like
the only
6 a.m. was it. Like that was the time we had. And I mean, still kind of is. But I think in those conversations, it was a time of obviously like connecting for us, but I think we were like, how do we get women to do this same thing? Like we saw just so many women who probably like needed that community And we just dreamt a lot about how do we create these spaces, or how do we invite women to each other's homes and to just like have an organic like community. So that's really where it started. I know that's when people think I'm inspired.
And this was like with one other girl too.
Yes.
And so it was you, me, and Andrea.
Yep.
And we would have breakfast dates.
Yeah.
And I think what we were surprised at the love and support of like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing this life alone. And, I think that we had heard through, you grew up in church, I grew up in church, that community is so important. And I don't think that you and I, until that moment in our season of life, right? Because community changes with seasons of your life. At that moment, I think all of us had little kids, and, we had tried small groups or whatever with little kids, and, anybody who's done that before knows that it poses some challenges. And I think that all of us were just like, this is so meaningful for us.
Like we just were able to form our own little sense of community. And I think those mornings like helped my faith like immensely. Sure. Like just being able to walk through some really like tough decisions together. And also just like have fun together. Like that was half of it too. I mean, I gladly woke up at, the butt crack of dawn to go do those things because I loved being with you guys. And so I think from those conversations, like I said, we talk about that. It's a very small group, and people think about Inspired with the conference, and that's such a large scale event. But I think the heart and desire of Inspired conference specifically was a launching point to get women in these like smaller circles and community.
Right. It's always been the mission and the vision to help people connect with God and connect with others. And so, just coming out of those types of conversations, and like you said, there was a deep need to know how to bridge the gap of connection without being able to be in person in 2020. And so, and a little bit of my background where like kind of just these conversations started was I had done this very in-depth Bible study for many years, and it's called Bible Study Fellowship. I've told many people about it, but I was BSF. I was driving from. Well, we moved in 2020, so we lived in Pickerington, and then we moved out to Baltimore, which is even further. And so we moved at that point. I was involved in BSF for 6 years or so, and I was serving in a leadership capacity there. And like I said, it was just very rich, deep Bible study. And I had this feeling of like, I'm driving so far to plug into this community, and I don't see these women any other time of the week. And I had this desire of, I just want to bring some level of this to where we're at. I mean, like at our home church. And so that's kind of where the ideas started flowing, the conversations were sparked. Yeah. And it's like, how do we create intentional, rich, deep community within a whole group of women? And so I kind of put myself out there. When I look back, I'm like, that was a little gutsy to like, I was like, I want to meet with Pastor Tim. Yeah. And I mean, luckily we were friends, first. Yeah. So, but I just shared with them, I don't know how or why, but I feel like there's an opportunity to bring together women with an intention of knowing God in deeper ways through the study of Scripture. Yep. And I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't really know what to do or how to organize, but I think that we should do this. And so then I think that's when you and I were connected, and then we just started going from there. And
so I'm curious, and we can talk about some of the things that we built, but tell me, you wrestled with a lot of different names besides Inspired, right? There was a few that you were tossing around.
Yeah, I actually don't remember what they were.
I was just thinking about that. I'm like, what other names? Because we talked about it for a long time. This was a Breakfast Club conversation. Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
I don't remember any other names that.
It just Inspired as a good one.
It was, yeah. It kind of like, we sat on it for a little bit. Like I know Andrea, Rebecca, and I talked about it. And it actually comes, this is horrible. I should probably know this beforehand, but I think it's like from 1st or 2nd Corinthians.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Like one of the beginning chapters of one of those books, or Colossians. Oh, great. I don't really know, but it is from
I'm sure we did
a passage of scripture that Paul was talking to a group of people, and he was saying, you are in the presence of people who are doing the same thing that you are, and you have leaders over you who are there not to like boss you around or for you to just like mindlessly copy, but those leaders are there, and that this community is here for you to be inspired by what God is doing through you right now. I mean, because he was saying like, you guys are going out to Macedonia and all the surrounding regions, and Christ's name is being spread throughout. And it's not because, of anything short of people using their lives to allow Jesus to speak through them and to spread his word. And the translation that I was reading was inspired, and like, you've been inspired by those who have gone before you. And I thought, wow, that's a great name. Like, how can we integrate it? And so it kind of stuck from there. So
you guys started having these visions. You talked with PT, you and I talked a little bit. Nothing was built yet. Like, as you guys started to through Breakfast Club, and then I think through that, the two of you in particular started really talking and connecting. What were some of the ideas? Because so you want to create kind of intentional organic community around a table, around a meal. You're eating, you're growing in your faith, you're doing that. That sounds awesome, but sometimes you need a little bit of strategy or some intentionality in how you're going to do that on a larger scale across a bigger community, which we were bigger at the time, and we're even bigger now than what we were back then.
Right.
So you started talking about some ways to do that. What were some of the first initial thoughts on what that looked like?
Yeah, it was multifaceted.
I would say we probably had a lot of ideas. I think having like a night, like a women's night, was definitely like a conversation we had, and we weren't quite there yet. I think because our church does offer like worship nights and things like that, and it was always like, well, how is it, kind of any different than what is already offered? And I think through the course of like conversation and just hearing what God wanted, like we wanted to set aside an entire day where women could come and learn and grow in God's word. I mean, that's, was half the point of like the vision of the conference, but also a day where women can come and just be free of responsibility for a day and be taken care of for a day. So I think that was it. But then also like that be a launching point into circles. I mean, that was like a huge aspect of the conference, like having women come together for a whole day where they can be taken care of, where they can be nourished in every way. And there's been a lot of other, now we're having like inspired nights, and there's all these facets of inspired that have come out of it and have flourished. I don't know. What do you have to add?
I mean, I was going to say, like you said, the intention of a conference was we were very aware that was a one-day thing.
Right.
And I think our heart was, well, I mean, like one day is great, but like how can we equip outside of just the one day? And so we had things like the Inspired Box. That was one of our first, do you remember that?
Oh,
one of our first things. Like, what can we put into women's hands that will aid them and equip them to like grow personally? And so the Inspired Box was the very first thing. I mean, like we were literally painting on white cardboard boxes, like 300 cardboard boxes. We were painting the same design. I mean, like,
because
when
women
we say
love
grassroots, this has really started from.
I mean, and women love subscription boxes, right?
For sure.
And so that's kind of where that stemmed from like a love of like getting a box of like
and
fun
what was
things.
In there?
A devotional, Bible tabs, highlighters. I mean, there was a lot of fun.
There was sunglasses,
cute things. It was like summer. It was like, I think it was at summertime.
Yeah.
And it was just a way for us to like pour into the women,
Yeah, and stay connected to Jesus throughout the summer.
Right.
Because like our programming changes around the summertime.
But in a very fun, feminine, girly way that, we love.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a ton of fun.
The podcast ended up coming around that time. Since we were in a season of lockdown, it was kind of like, well, if we can't meet together, what is another way in which, aside from not being able to meet together, there's a time constraint on all of us, especially women, because we're the drivers to the appointments, we're the takers to school, we're the, a lot of times we're the prepper of meals, sometimes we're the gatherer of groceries. I mean, like we wear so many different hats, as do men, but there was time in a car
Yep.
that someone could tune in and be a part of a conversation. And so that's where the podcast came from, because we're like, women are on the go. So what is a way in which we can, kind of bind hearts together, not only to God, but also to other women? And so the encouragement out of the podcast was sit around a table, like go grab some coffee. Like if you don't have time to join a circle and do some studying and some extra homework on the side, well, what would it look like for you just to turn your, iTunes, YouTube, or Spotify on in your car and listen into a conversation? So that was another stint of Inspired, another facet of Inspired. Like you said, small groups, we called them Inspired Circles. Like they're groups for women.
Led by women. And not that there's anything wrong with like the, groups that have men and women. It's just that we found by listening and having coffee and just having conversations, we found that there was a lot of women that would honestly could be intimidated by stepping into a circle where there was couples, because we have some married groups, small groups. And so I think that there was a lot of people that were searching for a place to belong that involved only women. And some women's stories it's a vulnerable thing to tell parts of a woman's story, when sometimes some of those vulnerabilities involve other people and males. And so they don't know where is a safe place to tell their story. So the Inspired Circles came out of that. So, I mean, very multifaceted ministry to where, we've got the conference, the podcast, the
circles,
curriculum. We've done a cookbook. We've got the circles. And
did an Advent devotional.
We did an Advent devotional.
Yeah.
Yep. We did a lot of different things. It was fun to kind of watch all that just kind of be birthed and try different things. Okay, what about this? Let's try this. Or, let's talk about this and let's figure this out. I'm curious, after we kind of got together and decided, okay, we're going to move forward with Inspired. You and I did a podcast on the X podcast with Pastor Tim. We talked about it. Okay, we're going to launch this movement. I think it launched we started having the conversations in 2020. By the time we were worked out some vision, different things like that, I think we launched at some point in spring of 2021.
Yeah.
But the first really big thing we did as a community was conference. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
In October.
Fall 2021.
That was the first conference. What's the memory from the first conference?
I think I remember thinking, oh my gosh, so many people came to this.
Yeah.
I remember thinking the kind of the buzz of, wow, this was really cool. I didn't know that we could do this. Or I think women thought, this is really cool. I'm hearing from a bunch of different speakers and I'm gaining some new knowledge, because that's one thing. When you go to a church, you hear a lot of the same voices, and that's not bad at all. But what does it look like to kind of open up your realm of, influential voices in your life? And so we were very particular about who should we have speak, who's that year it was all video.
Yep.
And I think one of the responses that we heard coming out of the conference is, I want to see real live people. I don't want to watch a video. I want to see someone standing in front of me preaching. And so the second conference, that was what happened.
Yeah. I think.
What do you remember?
Well, when you first asked the question, I thought about making charcuterie boxes for hours.
Can I just say, finish your
which those live in infamy. I will say, those are classic, and I hope whoever was there loved them. But we spent
those took hours.
Yeah. And sweet Lorley, Pastor Tim's wife, literally rolled salami. I literally think for hours. And so, but that's only like a part of it. Yes, that's like silly and fun and making that, but like the time that was spent behind the scenes of like the fellowship that happened during that time, like I have gotten to know women that I have never even like seen on a Sunday morning because they just showed up and wanted to help and serve. And like Laura-Lee's and I's relationship, like, you know, we were able to connect over like years of doing the conference, and just those are the moments that I think really solidify like doing the conference. And not only that, but like, yes, having people show up and you're like, wow, like how, like I get to do this. Like it just kind of takes me back to like being grateful for the leadership of the church to like give us the freedom and the ability to like even put something, you know, like this together and to like make it happen, you know, like I'm not in ministry, like I'm not really, you know, doing anything, but to be able to have that, I feel like is such a gift. And then to see it all come out to play that first conference, I was like, wow, this is cool. And like, this is just the beginning. Like, I think each year our dreams kind of grew bigger and bigger for what the ministry could do and for the women in the room. So I think, like it was just, it was just
pointed
a
out
kickoff.
Something very crucial in the development of this was you had said something like, we're not in ministry. And I think that if I were being honest, one of the biggest tension points for me and also for you is the blossoming and the creating and the growing of Inspired was not done from like a staff position. And like you said earlier, you were a staff liaison and you helped with the growing and the guardrails and the pointing and the like, you know, you're in the conversations of like what's happening with staff and vision and where are we moving, where are we going. But Rebecca and I weren't sitting at those tables. And so there was always this tension of who are we to do any of this, because we're not on staff and we're not in the meetings and we're not doing this. But I think that all of that was just out of a passion to see people connect.
Yeah.
And
I also think it was our version of like serving the church.
Yeah.
Like I think there were many years where, you know, we may not have served on a Sunday morning.
Oh, for sure.
But this was our way of like, this was our way of serving. Yeah. And we were serving the women of our church, whether it was, you know, leading the conference and kind of launching all of that, but doing circles, you know, behind the scenes or mentoring women, you know, Inspired is like the big umbrella for all of that, for what we did and what we're still doing.
It's so funny listening to both of you respond to the conference question from my seat. I'll share my perspective. I knew you were going to answer something around either like content or vision for the day or like what we're going to do for people. And I knew you were going to talk about those charcuterie boxes. Like if I can say that, I think the reason why Inspired works so well is both of you work together as a team. And I think like in many ways, Jess, you had like the mind, the vision of what Inspired was. You had a clear picture of like what this was going to accomplish, like in a theological sense, but also for women in that way. And Rebecca, I think you had a heart for women. And I think it was like that combination of like mind and heart. And you have, both of you have a heart. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist. And
we're falling, we're dragging.
No. But like just the combination of that together, I think was so special. And I'm not surprised that both of you remembered those specific
well, I think as it
conference.
kept growing, it was very evident. You know, people talk about spiritual gifts, and like, to be honest, I'm like, I don't know what spiritual gift is. Because, right, a lot of times we just show up into space and we're like, how can I be used? And I think that was very evident as things kept unfolding, was that there were things that I could not, and I just couldn't do. Like the organization, when I tell you that Rebecca is an organized person, I'm not joking. I mean, just the spreadsheets and the timelines and the texts and the communication strategies and just all of the things. It's just like she would think about a whole realm that I'd be like, I didn't even think about that. And so when you show up in a space and you say, God, use me to the best of your ability, then, and you actually surrender to that movement, then I think that God just really uses you and works through you. And like scripture says, we all come to the body with a different function. And it was very evident as things kept unfolding that I had a different function than Rebecca did, and Rebecca had a different function than I did. And that is the ultimate picture of the beauty of the body of Christ. And what we saw happening was that the more women came involved in this, and the different ways in which women used, like I'll be here, like God can use me. However, we saw that there was so many different working parts of the body that were working within the ministry of Inspire, that it was mind blowing to me to see that when you do actually commit to just being used, you show up and God uses you.
Yeah.
My memory that I'll share from the Inspired conference, the first one, is I have a picture of Charlie sitting on those swings. You guys remember the swings?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Swings, that was first conference.
Yeah, swings was first conference. They came back for second conference
It
too,
did.
because we were like, what are we doing?
Everybody loved them.
Yeah, they did. And I think that we used them recently. Didn't we use them for Easter, maybe? No. We used it for the last Inspired conference too,
They
but it was,
used 3
they
times.
did.
but not like functionally as a swing. It was more of a photo op. Anyways, I got a picture of Charlie. She's our oldest daughter. She was probably 5 maybe. No, it was October, so she probably was 6 when that first conference happened, and she was swinging on the swings. I think I like made an Instagram story or whatever, and I was like, future Inspired girl. And I just think that like that for me was like, okay, here's why also this is happening, not just for people who are here and now in the present, but also like for the
that
future
will be impacted.
that will be impacted in the future. And I just think it's just needed. And I think you guys, as you thought about Inspired, it was always like, what can we do now? What can we build now? But also, I think you guys were also thinking about what's going to happen down the road, what's going to happen like in the future for the women of our church and things like that. And I always love that you guys thought that way.
Yeah.
I think the best way to describe, our relationship, like in the beginning and all the planning for specifically the conference, Jess would come up with all of these like visions and dreams and ideas, and especially creative ones, like in the foyer, and like, what are we going to do, like decoration wise. And the goal was to always make the space like beautiful and creative, but she would have all these like dreams and ideas and how we want
How many
women,
times did you think I was crazy?
how we want women to feel when they like walk in, and hospitality wise and everything. And I would be the person that would be like, okay, but how can we like really make that happen? You know what I mean? Like logistically, like how can we do this? And then I would be like, okay, let's run with it. Like let's do it. Like let's
boxes. Like wouldn't it
execute
be
this.
so cool if everybody had their
that was-
tiny little charcuterie box? And Rebecca's probably thinking, what?
Yeah, but
it happened.
But I was always on board with like the vision and the dreams and the ideas you had, because like I knew that your heart and like what you dreamt for this ministry was like rooted in God, and like rooted what you knew, like what was supposed to happen. So like it was just, it was a beautiful dynamic. And like now that tone has been set, it's like, I don't know, every year like we bring more and more people onto the Inspired team, and like who can do the same thing and run with it. And it's beautiful. It's really wonderful to see.
So this is awesome. And it's awesome what God has done, what he is doing. Some people might wonder, why change, or why step away? And there's some things happening behind the scenes that, 5 years later that people may or may not be aware of. And you guys are different people than what you were when this started.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like a lot of life has happened since 2020, 2021. We've had more kids. We've moved at this point from where we were before. A lot of circumstances around you have changed, and I don't know, maybe share a little bit of just what God's been doing in your life, and kind of what's next for you.
Yeah. I guess it was about 1.5 years ago that it was actually right before one of the conferences that I felt this shift of like trying to figure out, because it's always like whenever we get up to a conference, it's like, how can you top that? Like it always just feels like that conference was the funnest thing. And there's always this like tension of the pressure of like what comes next and what are we going to do next, but also this, tension of like, let's just celebrate like what's going on right now. And so, the nature of leadership, and whenever you lead something, I mean, there's always this tension of like, okay, like you have to be thinking 10 steps ahead of what's happening in the moment. And at this particular moment in Crossroads, I was like, I don't know what's next. And which was a little interesting for me, because I think since the very beginning, there's always been this like, almost like this injection of like, go here, do this, go fast. And so I got to a moment where I'm like, okay, so like what's next? And, I want to also say right now that like, I don't think we're always designed to think 10 steps ahead. And I think that sometimes that can be like a fallacy of like my personality is, and not in a bad way, but just like I tend to be very future oriented. And at that time, I think that God was pushing the brakes for me, and he was saying like, I want you to be here. Like, I want you to be in the moment. I want you to see what I'm doing right now. And so I think that there was like this like divine, pause. And I was like, okay, well then I'll pause, and I won't have a next after this one, but I don't really know what that is. And so at that time I shared with Zach, and I shared with Pastor Tim and Pastor Russ, like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I just need to feel like I need to communicate this to you. And, as guides along the way, like maybe be, prayerful with me of like, what is that? I don't know. I just feel something. And I think that as it unfolded, I felt like there were so many women that were just already leading so much of the facets of Inspired. And all of that was very intentional. Like, it doesn't need to just be one of us. It doesn't need to be just two of us. It needs to be a collection of community, so that when people like from the outside, the women that look in, they can see themselves. Because if we're so autonomous that there's only one leader, one face, one voice, one everything, gosh, we're doing people a disservice, because we're not showing the multifaceted beauty of Christ. And so there was a lot of women at this point that were involved and that were serving in different capacities. We had lots of different hosts and people come on the podcast to use their voices and their circumstances and life stages. And I think that all of that was just being put in the works to where when I did feel this pause, that I felt the freedom to sit in it. And at that point, I felt like, okay, there's enough people. The blueprint is set for this conference. And I remember having a conversation with you. I said, I don't know if I'm to do the next conference. And I think that there was a pause. There was a question of like, well, this is already integrated in the fabric of X Church, and women love this. And so it's going to keep going. And at that point I was like, not with me, and that's okay. And like, to be able to hand that section off, gosh, it was a huge chunk, because that was a lot of what Inspired was known for, was the conference. And in that pause, I started feeling this shift to kind of dive into something new. And that new thing that I'm doing is called spiritual direction. And it's kind of hard to define. A lot of times we're like, what's spiritual direction? And it's not what it sounds like. It sounds like I sit down with a person or a group of people and I tell them what they need to do spiritually, but that is so not what it is. Just in really short, it's just journeying through life, looking for God at the crossroads. And so what that looks like is sitting down with a very few people or one person at a time and just listening to their story and saying, I wonder where God is. Mm-hmm. And them having the tools and the resources to connect with God by themselves, to wonder, where is God pointing me? Where is he taking me? What is he doing? Even though I'm experiencing this grief or sorrow, where is God showing up? And so the crazy ironic thing of that was that it was such a drastic left turn to, instead of organizing things for many, it was like focusing on how to listen to one person. And with this comes schooling. And so I enrolled in the School of Spiritual Direction out of a place called Sustainable Faith in Illinois. And I didn't really know what I was signing up for. And to be honest, like, I had a friend who told me about spiritual direction and said, you would be great at this. I think this is right up your alley. And so I went into that very first time of schooling and learned from there what spiritual direction was. And as I've sat in it and as I've been a part of that school, I'm like, this was the God knew what he was doing when he said pause. And the crazy thing is that the parts of this spiritual direction, it's so it's concentrated around the pauses, and it's concentrated around the silence, and it's concentrated around the listening. And I shared with you yesterday, I'm an Enneagram 3, and so are you. And we can go so fast and so forward, and which can be so good because we need people that have laser focused leadership. But I feel like that there was this part that I was needing to learn a new strategy. I was needing to learn a new part of my spirituality. And so it became very like singular focus, like one person at a time. And so I had this kind of like, well, what happens to inspired? And so that was a big question of mine for a long time.
Yeah.
And
in the same season that as you're starting to contemplate all these different things, you also started.
Yeah, something was happening to Rebecca too.
Like shifting away from things that you've done for a long time.
Yeah. So when Inspired really launched, I would say in 2021, I was working from home. I was teaching online, which was just okay. It was not super fulfilling, but it allowed me to stay home with my two youngest when they were babies. And it was such a gift at the time. But I also was like, I need something to do. If you know me, I like having a lot of things. I like having a lot of things on my plate, and people laugh at me. But
you're just gifted in multitasking.
We could say that, sure. But I really wanted something. I think before I even realized it, I needed something that was a little bit more purposeful, a little bit more fulfilling. And then I feel like Inspired kind of swooped in and fulfilled a lot of those gaps that I needed in my life. And it allowed me, once again, to like serve my community, to serve my church. And with that, over the years, I learned so much about myself and like what my strengths are and like where my giftings are. And I think for a long time, like I've gone through this like career journey of like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I just have been like one phase at a time. I mean, motherhood is like, my number one job, but I've always felt called to a job as well. And so teaching online was a means to an end. It was okay. And then within the past like 18 months, I'm like, something's got to change. Like I had been praying, like there's got to be something that I can do that will meet all of my strengths and gifts, but also like fulfills a purpose and something that I can do that I love. And so there were a lot of opportunities, I'll be honest, that like came in my way that I said no to. Like there were several opportunities where I just heard God saying like, no, like this isn't it. This don't just try to like escape, your job because of whatever. So there were a lot of opportunities that I had to say no to, and it was really hard. So I was just in a really long waiting season, and lo and behold, I did get an opportunity. Like, I mean, it's kind of crazy to talk about, but like I just had a connection with someone. So it wasn't even a job I like applied for. Shout out to Rachel Kuhn if she's going to listen to this someday. But like it was just a connection I had made, and she works for a wish granting organization called A Special Wish, and she basically was like, I think you would make an amazing wish director. Like, is this something you'd be interested in? Over a conversation over lunch. And there were multiple conversations that happened after that. It was not instantaneous. There was still waiting. There was still patience. But last year, literally a year ago, I started that job as a wish director. And so what that has allowed me to do is use my administrative organizational gifts combined with my love of like Disney and travel, because I'm also a travel planner on the side. And, you know, a lot of our wishes are Disney. So it just...
And helping others.
And helping others. So it really, like, I think back about it now and I tell people this, like, if I were to make up a dream job, like, this probably is it for me.
You used those words when you were explaining the opportunity.
Yeah.
You're like, this is like a dream job.
Yeah. And all the waiting, all of those days I didn't want to write an IEP or whatever, like, all of those times, you know, were worth it. But also, like, I don't think I would be here if I had not walked through what Inspired gave me, which was doing literally, like, organizing, communicating, like, just making plans, like, all of that. It just all intersects, like, I can't even explain. And so it really has been such a gift. And so with that, you know, starting a new job, like, I'm not working at home every day. I'm in office 3 days a week. My time and capacity is like so much more limited. And I have 4 kids now. So that in itself is a job.
Well, yeah, because so much of Inspired was done up here at the building with our kids in tow.
Yeah,
during
literally.
the days.
Yeah.
So this is happening to both of you in your own like separate worlds. And I'm just kind of like, oh, okay.
Okay.
Bye.
No. As you know, you use the word staff liaison. I think that's what I call myself to what Inspired is. You know, one of the tensions I've always felt is like, okay, yes, we don't have someone on staff. You brought up that tension, but I feel weird about leading in a woman's space as a man. Like, I'm not. Yeah, very obviously, there's some unqualifications there that exist. And so it was easy with both of you. I could, hey, how can I help? Here's the vision. Here you guys said, here's our vision, and I said that's perfect. That aligns with like where we're going. Here's some things to think about. Run in that direction, and if I think we're going off track, I'll bring us back into where we want to go, which never really happened. And you guys just made it easy. But as you guys were stepping away, I'm left thinking, okay, we've got this thing that has been built from nothing into something, and it's still in process. It's not yet reached completion, but we can't just... I didn't feel like it was time to just let this thing go. And I
don't think either one of us did as well.
No,
that was the tension, is because it was like, it's not something that you can just stop.
Yeah. And we didn't have answers to like what some of those transitions were going to look like. But I just said, hey, I can for a year be a bridge behind the scenes and help coordinate and organize and lead efforts to make sure conference happens. And so that's what we did this past year. It's a lot of work. If you didn't know that, it's a lot of work. And you, Jess, have continued to kind of help out with some other parts of Inspired, helping do the first Inspired night, doing another couple of seasons of podcasts, things of that nature. You've continued to help Rebecca with conference planning and some things like that on the side. But roles begin to shift and change, and things begin to shift. And along the way, you know, there's more exploration of what that looks like to let go. And we kind of reached a point, I think, after this past Inspired conference where we're like, okay, both of you had some significant time stepping into some new realities that you were like going into youth spiritual direction, you with your new job. And you both are like, no, we feel like God has put us in these lanes, and there's more for us here, and we need to continue to step into that. And that's going to mean you guys continuing to step further back from Inspired.
Which I will say as Rebecca and I have processed it, whether we knew it or not, there was some grief involved in that. Yeah.
Anything you guys want to share, or is that?
I think that. Time? Well, I think that we can briefly share, but whenever you're deeply involved in something, and you're actually a part of not only leading it, but like being part of the creative process and coming up with what it is. There's a level. It's not ours, it's God's vision, but God, for whatever reason, put us into position to help it grow and used us in that process. And so when both of us realized this aspect of stepping away, it was like, I don't think I realized it at the time, but I was like, I'm being obedient, going in this direction, but there's a level of like handing it off and letting it go that was hard. Because in some senses you feel like you birthed a baby. I mean, Rebecca and I've talked about this. Like, we feel like we birthed a baby.
Can't really relate to that, but
taught
okay.
a toddler, and we like just, you know, I get this image of like when a kid is learning to walk, like at first you're holding on to this baby's hands and you're like guiding their steps, and
we
then
had to learn a lot along the way.
Yeah, and then eventually like they're holding on to your finger, and then eventually they just walk. And I think that the beautiful thing is that once Rebecca and I found ourselves in this spot, we were like, it's walking. I mean, it's like it's walking. And you know, I think any parent would relate to this of like when your child is born, like it's not yours. It's the Lord's, and you get to aid in the growth of it. But at one point, and what I'm learning now with teenagers is you got to let out the rope. And you just got, like, the tether gets looser and looser as they go. And the great thing about it is that the goal of doing this is so that like a child of mine can walk out of my house and live a life that is healthy and vibrant and full. And I think that the grief aspect of that is I don't think we realized like, oh, this is like letting something go that was really important to us. So I don't know if you can think of it.
That's, yes, all very relevant. That's the best way I can describe it too, having to let it go. And I think I always knew that there was going to be a point where I was going to have to step away. Like, I was never going to be this involved because of my capacity. Once again, 4 kids, job. And so I knew that at some point it was going to happen. I just don't think I ever knew when. And so I think when Jess, told me that she was going to have to step away, I was kind of like, what does this mean for me? And I think you can't convince me otherwise that, me starting this job and her stepping away, like all of this happened at the same time. And I had to let go of control. And I think that's something I have a hard time with. Like, I really had to let go of control. Not only did I have to do that, but I had to let go and kind of give it to my husband. And so like a women's ministry. So it was very weird. I mean, we kind of laugh about it now. Like, we're good. But
we had tears about this earlier.
Yeah,
so.
It's just awkward. And there was a lot of tears the past years over it, the past year over it. And I feel like we can sit here today and know that everything's been orchestrated by God. Thank God for that. You know what I mean? And that we're able to sit here and talk about it. But I think for me, talking about letting things go and letting it kind of run, I think the hardest part for me is not feeling like it needs me. I like to feel needed. I like to feel wanted, and knowing that a specific thing that I kind of helped birth doesn't need me anymore. And it can go on its own. I'm still processing that. I'm not over that yet. But it's allowed me to step back and to view from the outskirts everything that's happening, and the fact that it can still go is
that's how God has wired
wonderful.
you. Is you have said you're an Enneagram 2, and an Enneagram 2 loves to help people. Their heart's desire is that people are helped, and you have a huge heart for people, like you said earlier. And when God gets you to a stage of maturity to where you have good self-actualization of I like to be needed. And for a long time, this needed me. And you have outgrown that. That shows huge growth, because you're saying it's not dependent on me, because I'm not the one that keeps this going. It's God. And I think, I know that God honors that posture, because God's saying good job for you realizing that you like to be needed, but also I've got it. You know?
Right.
Which is so humbling.
Yeah. there's a lot to unpack there, but just to finish the story and then we'll close. I think as you guys were working through that transition together and also on your own, in your own ways, we were able to pick up the slack and keep going with what you guys had started. And, it was a fun conference this past season. And I saw new things happen. I saw new people get involved, new people have an opportunity to step in and lead and create vision and do things in that way. And I think because of that, where there's an absence, there's an opportunity for new leaders to step up and have more ownership over things, which I think is a positive thing. While
Absolutely.
it is hard, and I'm acknowledging that for both of you, I think it is also a really good thing for,
I'm
for
so
people in our
thankful for
church.
that.
Yeah.
Truly.
So I think with that, though, I was like, I remember having conversations at the conference with Pastor Tim and Pastor Russ. I just said, listen, guys, I said, I love,
Emphasis on guys.
Yeah, I said, I love Inspired. I said, but this, I said, and I will continue to do what I've done in the past, like kind of help from behind the scenes and just be that a guiding voice. But I cannot be the point person leading this and doing this. And I said, we're really at the point where we're 5 years into this ministry. I think this was the 5th conference that we had done. I said that this thing has more than proven its worth, and the fruit from this ministry is just we could do probably 2 more podcasts about stories of people in circles and different things like that of what God has done. I said it's time that we need to. What does it look like for us to find and install a new leader, someone who can really help transition from what it has been into what it's going to be next? And they agreed. And so we put out the word. We searched, and I just remember my prayer being, God, would you bring the right person? Bring the right person who is going to have the heart and the mind for what Inspired has been, and would be able to carry that into
I remember you saying the word grit.
Yeah, grit.
Too.
Yes, grit was another one that I used because it is gritty, and just praying, God, would you bring the right person to lead us forward? And I am happy to announce that we feel like God has brought us the right person. So drum roll, please. Big announcement. We have found a brand new Inspired director. It feels brand new, even though it's a new position on staff. I feel like you guys together represented what the Inspired director was before, even though that title wasn't an official one. You guys carry that title in those ways. But her name is Samantha Eubank, or Sam, as everyone likes to call her. She is amazing. She's special. She's very qualified and has a great heart for ministry, for women. In many ways, she's just getting started. So many of you probably listening are like, who's Sam? I don't know this person. Don't you worry.
You will.
You will. And we're going to have her on the podcast next and really begin to unfold her and some of her story and how that intersects with this ministry. Because it's kind of cool what God has done even in her story and her journey to get her to this point. And I think there's a lot of intersection there that is powerful too. But I'll let her tell that story.
Yeah.
But as we close, do you guys have any thoughts? Anything you want to say? It could be on a personal level, it could be to other people, but just like as this is a season about transitions, just any final thoughts? You guys have said a lot already, but
Yeah. I could probably say a lot more, but I think I sit here and being able to do this podcast, I had a lot of anxiety about it just because I didn't know what I was going to say, how much I was going to say, but I feel like this was a moment that I needed to really transition and to do that. So I'm just very grateful for everything the ministry's given me, but also just what I've been able to do for other people. So, and to do it with one of your best friends, it doesn't get better than that,
Are you talking about me or Zach?
Both of you.
I'm just kidding. I'd say the exact same thing. It was more than I ever could have imagined. When it started, I shared this in the last episode, but one of my greatest memories has been standing up on a stage during a conference and seeing the amount of women that I never knew had the same longing that I did to connect. So I think it's really amazing to see what the Holy Spirit does when he unites his believers under Jesus. And so I never knew I needed that. I never knew I needed women, because I've always been one to say, like, I always been surrounded by guys. Like, I'm not a girl's girl. I have just been blown away. And I think that God, in his tender love for me, has given me the community of women.
Yeah.
And that's so surprising to me.
Yeah. I love that.
So,
I can just say collectively for the church, for the women of the church, even though I'm a man, that we're so thankful for both of you. And just stepping out in courage. It takes courage to step out. Whenever you lead something and do something, especially not on staff, there's going to be challenges that come. There's tensions to overcome. There's hard conversations to have. People are going to ask questions, and just you two stepping out in boldness, and being willing to lead through that, to have a vision for people. I know there's a lot of people, who have been blessed by, what, you guys dreamed about around a breakfast table 5 years ago. And
pretty amazing.
And I think that's really, really cool. And that's an important part of the story and the legacy, as this thing transitions. So, you guys will always definitely have a seat at the table, for Inspired, to use the phrase. And while we're excited about the future, I'll just speak for everyone and say we honor you both, and just we love you guys.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see what God does in each of your stories.
Yeah. Me too.
In the future.
Yeah. Well, with tears rolling down my face, I'm closing out this episode, but I'm also telling you to come back, because like Pastor Zach said, we're going to be introducing Sam next episode. So join us. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Inspired Podcast. If something in today's conversation encouraged you, share it with a friend or reach out. We'd love to hear from you at inspired@thex.church. And remember, wherever you are, you're not alone. You're designed by God, invited to discover more, and welcome to dwell with him.